Well, welcome everyone. My name is Jeff Kossoff, and it's my great pleasure on behalf of Terry Root to welcome you all to this dedication of the bench memory of Steve Schneider. In particular, I'd like to extend a warm welcome to Steve's sister and brother and their families who are here, as well as a warm Stanford welcome to the former Vice President of the United States, the Honorable Al Gore. Welcome to the Vice President. At this point, I'd like to call on Terry to extend her welcome to everyone, and we shall begin.
Thank you all for coming. It really means a lot to me. And I wasn't going to cry. Oh, sorry. First of all, I have to tell you thank you, Mr. Vice President, for coming. It means the world to me. You were very important to Steve, and you're very important to the world, and we couldn't be saving the world the way we are without you. I also would like to thank Armin and Eliane Nuckerman, Mike Haas, Joan Lane, and Jane Woodward for the help in actually making this happen. And I also would like to thank all of Steve's family for coming in and letting me remain a member of the family. And finally, what I would like to do is acknowledge the artist. Richard, will you stand up? This is the artist that actually made the bench for us. Thank you. It's Richard Deutsch. And then in the end, I would love to just tell you all thank you so much for being there and for giving Steve the love and support that you did. It was wonderful for his life. Thank you.
Hello, everyone. I am Sally Bingham. I'm an Episcopal priest, and Steve, as you might assume, was an agnostic, or perhaps even a full-fledged atheist. And it isn't something that we talked about. And what amused many of us is that he behaved a lot like a passionate religious leader. He could be compared to the Old Testament prophets. He raged on about drought, fires, floods, rising seas with the spread of disease, unless we changed our ways. Now, he might not have called it preaching, but lots of us did. And even though I am a believer and he wasn't, we were good friends and we shared the common goal of trying to solve a monumental problem. Steve was rare in many ways, and the religious community is suffering a great loss. Not because we lost a religious leader, but because there are few scientists who are willing to have discussions about God's purpose for the human species, or loving your neighbor as yourself. Steve understood the value of religious voices in the dialogue looking for solutions. He also knew that if the religious community would step up and get involved, we could educate millions of people on the subject of climate change. He recognized climate change as a moral issue that needs messages based on people's values. Now, these are Steve's own words that I was able to find. This is Steve. Religious leaders are value leaders with a great deal to say about our responsibilities to each other and to nature. Scientists are information leaders who can trace the implications for environment and society on the consequences of our behavior. By working together to align the moral issues with the scientific basis for risks, the two communities have an opportunity to focus on stewardship, a common value held by both groups, regardless of differences that might exist over the issue of origin. Working together on shared values is a critical step towards sustainability. That's the end of the quote. I treasure those words, and I treasured Steve's and my friendship. It was based on respect and the understanding that people who don't have to agree on everything can still be very good friends and find common ground and work together for solutions. No one that I know in the scientific community was more readily able to talk to religious leaders than Steve. He answered every call and he responded to every email, no matter how ridiculous some of the questions were. And I really believe that without the science, religion does not have a prayer to solve the climate problem. Steve was one of the first, but has now laid the groundwork for other scientists to work with the religious community. I'll close with the thought that we are all given gifts. Some folks never know what their gifts are, and they strive for unachievable goals. And others get their gifts mixed up, and they become lawyers when they should be poets, or doctors when they should be circus performers, or business people when they're really good at fixing mechanical things. More often than not, outside influences will push us down paths where we don't belong. But that did not happen to Steve Schneider. He was given the gifts of a big brain, a big heart, and the courage to stand up for the truth. He never turned away from a difficult problem or a difficult question. And more importantly, he never turned away from a simple question either. Steve Schneider was born a seeker of the truth and given the capacity to hold a lot of information. His special gift was to share his wisdom, something he never stopped doing. He was a prophetic voice that will long be missed. And I will come to this bench, this beautiful bench, and remember Steve. And maybe if I sit quietly for a while right here, I can remember and hear his voice that was such a guiding light for me in my ministry and in the Interfaith Power and Light program, which is all about linking science and climate change together and the religious community. Now I'd like to introduce former Vice President, the Honorable Al Gore.
Thank you very much, Sally. Terry, thank you. God bless you. To members of Steve, to the other members of Steve's family who are here, Peter, Steve's brother, and your wife Sue, and Steve's sister Liz, and Liz's husband Mike, and their daughter Sarah. I've got everybody straight now. I think I'm looking in the wrong direction there. To Jeff Kosseff, thank you very much for presiding over this. Reverend Sally Bingham has been a bright light in the faith community in helping us all understand more clearly the moral dimensions of the climate issue. Valen Balatny, thank you very much for having the initiative when you were president of the student body government to come up with this bench. And by the way, there is no doubt this is the most beautiful bench anybody's ever seen. I mean, really and truly, it is absolutely spectacular and so inviting. Who's not going to want to come and meditate and contemplate? Really and truly, it's wonderful. We're honored to have with us Dr. Jane Lubchenco, the immediate past head of the National Oceanic and Atmospheric Administration. Thank you for your service to our country, Dr. Lubchenco. To Dean Pam Matson and Dr. Chris Field, Dr. Buzz Thompson, and to all of the distinguished guests who are here. All of us who had the privilege to know and to work with Steve Schneider would say something similar. He was a force of nature. He was a force for nature. He was sui generis. He was unique in every way. Edmund Burke is most often given credit for the famous saying that all that is necessary for evil to triumph is for good men to do nothing. Well, evil wasn't going to triumph while Steve Schneider was around, because he did everything that he possibly could. And many of us were and are so inspired by Steve's passion, his commitment, his stamina, his relentless desire to keep working for the truth and to get the message out. I first met Steve when he was deputy director of a key group at INCAR. I invited him to testify at one of the hearings that I launched in the House of Representatives a long time ago. I remember when I was first elected to the Congress in the mid-70s, seeing him on the Johnny Carson show discussing global warming at a time when there were very few people talking about global warming. His patience and his poise, his deep knowledge, his eloquence, and his desire to make it possible for everyone to understand the surprising fragility of the ecological system of the earth was all awe-inspiring to me. One of the eulogies for Steve noted, and I quote, "Steve did for climate science what Carl Sagan did for astronomy." And it's certainly true. Carl Sagan often spoke about our responsibility to preserve and cherish that pale blue dot that the Voyager showed us 5 billion kilometers away from the Earth. And in a similar fashion, there are very few people in history who were as successful as Steve was in helping to protect that only home that we have ever known. He understood very well in his last years that even after his passing, the battle to protect our planet would continue. The last line of Steve's last book features the classic lyric from Crosby, Stills, Nash, and Young, which is now emblazoned on this magnificent and beautiful bench. "Teach your children well." He did. Let me offer another lyric from that song. "The sky is clearing and the night has gone out. The sun he come, the world is all full of light. Rejoice, rejoice, we have no choice but to carry on." And so in honor of Steve's memory, as we dedicate this magnificent space in such a beautiful setting, we make and renew our commitment to carry on in Steve's honor. God bless.
It's great to be back at Stanford and to be able to take part in this dedication with all of you. I took over as chair of Stanford and government just a month before Professor Schneider's passing, and I remember the sense of shock that I shared with other students and staff at the Haas Center. The sense that we had lost, all too early, a close member of our community. Professor Schneider was a mentor to students selected as Stanford and government fellows for summer work at NGOs and governmental agencies that work on preserving our environment. Through SIG alone, he advised, supported, and inspired countless Stanford undergraduates, individuals who today are at the forefront of the fight for action on climate change. One such undergraduate, and a close friend of mine, Siddhartha Oza, reflected on his SIG fellowship in this way. Although I had planned to be a public policy major, by the end of the summer I had declared a major in the School of Earth Sciences. Professor Schneider taught me that in order to succeed in tackling climate change, we need a triad of scientific evidence, societal acceptance and understanding, and policy change. He led by example, showing that science wasn't just about men and women in white lab coats churning out journal articles incomprehensible to the general public, while making me understand that armed with a background in science, I would be more effective at bringing about societal acceptance and policy change. Though he was so close to students like Siddhartha and to Sig for many years, I unfortunately never had the chance to meet Professor Schneider in person. And yet, when I saw how his passing had affected the students, faculty, and staff who knew him well, when I reflected on the kind of character it took to inspire students the way he did year after year, and when I myself dove into learning more about his work, I realized that we had lost someone truly invaluable. I was moved with a sense that Sig had to not only honor Professor Schneider's mentorship and friendship, but also his legacy. In more ways than I truly appreciated at the time, Professor Schneider's passing shaped the way I saw Sig's mission. Through our campus events, fellowship offerings, and the new stipend program, we began focusing more than ever before on encouraging science, technology, and engineering majors to think about how their work can be of public service, and on encouraging students already interested in public policy to consider policy related to technology and the environment. When we conceived the idea of a Stephen Schneider Memorial Bench more than 2 years ago, we did so not only to express our deep gratitude for the indelible mark our friend had left on the generations of students he mentored, but also to make sure that future generations did not forget the cause for which he stood. Thanks to the dedication and contributions from staff, faculty, students, and other SIG friends, we are here today to make sure that the cause of responsible citizenship and care for our one and only Earth is physically rooted into the soil of this university. Sitting on this bench, Stanford students, community members, and visitors to the university will either be reminded of this cause through recognition of Professor Schneider's name, or, at the least, will be encouraged to look it up in the cloud. Today, with this dedication and with the first annual Stephen H. Schneider Memorial Lecture on the Environment, we are doing our part to honor a creed that was embodied by Professor Schneider, that is etched here in stone, and that is worth repeating. Teach your children well. Inspired by an invaluable mentor and friend, Sig is dedicated to making sure that his legacy and clarion call remain at the forefront of the work and thinking at Stanford University and beyond. With your help, and with Professor Schneider's example to guide us, we will make a difference. Thank you.
So before inviting Reverend Bingham to share a closing word with us, I just want to make one personal observation about Steve, and I also have a list of items that I need to cover with you from Terry, so important, so listen up. But before I do that, I just want to make a personal observation, and like Terry, I tend to get a little emotional, so I'll apologize in advance. So when I think about Steve, I think about a word in Yiddish that perhaps is one of the hardest words in the world in the Yiddish language to even translate. The word literally translated means a person. The word is mensch. But in its use, it's intended to convey so much more. A mensch is a person you want to be around because he or she makes you feel genuine and whole. A mensch makes you feel good about yourself and what you do. Lifts up those around him or her. A mensch inspires them to do good and to heal the world. A mensch always seems to know what the right thing to do and to say is. A mensch is a real person in every sense, a person of integrity and a person of honor. It is said that it's almost impossible to translate this word or its meaning or to define what a mensch really is. I just gave you the syndrome. I didn't give you the definition. But fortunately, you always know a mensch when you meet one. And Steve Schneider was such a person, a real mensch in every sense. And that's the way that I will always remember Steve, a true climate mensch. And so in thinking about that this morning, something just occurred to me, which I think Steve would encouraged me to say, because I know he would have done it. He would say, well, what's this day all about? Can you come up with a slogan that describes the day? And I said, yes, I can, Steve. We're dedicating a bench for a mensch. Now, you may be wondering why we gave you a stone, and I hope everyone has one. The Jewish tradition is to leave stones and memorials which indicate that you remember the person. It's a very simple way of saying, I was here, I remember, I value, and I honor you. So after Reverend Bingham ends the ceremony, please feel free to place your stones at the foot of the bench, because after all, it's very hard to sit on a bench full of stones. So after we've done that, then please, we'll be walking over to the Black Community Center for a reception, and the Vice President will be there as well, and he will be meeting with students. So please do respect the fact that we'd love the students an opportunity to meet with the Vice President. Now, Terry has asked me to please remind you to watch your time, because you need to be in your seat in Memorial Auditorium by 6:45, at which time your seat, if you're not in the seat, reverts to general admission. And I know there's probably a lot of people who are just dying to get in. So when you get to the auditorium, please walk down the aisles and find the signs that say Woods or bench dedication on them, and those are your seats. Those are the seats that are reserved for you. In the front of the auditorium, go to the line for reserved tickets. There's no need to wait in the much longer line. So that's the housekeeping chores that I have. Cherry, did I get them all right? Good, I get the thumbs up, which is very important. So now it's my great pleasure again to invite the Reverend Canon Sally Bingham to close the dedication with some words, and I think she has something very appropriate. Thank you.
Well, Terry gave me completely freedom to say whatever I wanted to say this afternoon with little guidance. I think knowing that I love Steve and that I wouldn't say anything bad about anyone who's here, and I can't do better than what the poet Pablo Neruda did in a perfectly beautiful poem that I will close with. The title is Keeping Quiet. Now we will count to 12, and we will all keep still. For once on the face of the earth, let's not speak in any language. Let's stop for 1 second and not move our arms so much. It would be an exotic moment without rush, without engines. We would all be together in a sudden strangeness. Fishermen in the cold sea would not harm whales, and the man gathering salt would look at his hurt hands. Those who prepare green wars, wars with gas, wars with fire, victory with no survivors, would put on clean clothes and walk about with their brothers in the shade, doing nothing. What I want should not be confused with total inactivity. Life is what it is all about. I want no truck with death. If we were not so single-minded about keeping our lives moving, and for once could do nothing, perhaps a huge silence might interrupt this sadness of never understanding ourselves and of threatening ourselves with death. Perhaps the earth can teach us, as when everything seems dead and later proves to be alive. Now I will count up to 12, and you will keep quiet, and I will go.